Hi everyone, this is Mark the Shark, Retorto from the Mark the Shark MMA Show. You're listening to Jim the Podcast Sherpa from the Too Many Podcast.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim the Podcast Sherpa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bruce, and thanks a lot for coming down. Rebels of the Sherpalution, rejoice. It is time for another episode of Too Many Podcasts. It's me, I'm back. Jim, the Podcast Sherpa, you know me, blah, 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 the podcast about podcasts, and so on and so forth. You know, we've all been there, I know. Can you believe it that next week is going to be our season 1 finale? We'll have gotten through 25 episodes together. I appreciate you all sticking around for me through all this time. I really, really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Wait a minute. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
It's theme week. It's theme week. It's theme week.
And this week's theme is another interesting one, that's for sure. We will be talking about the psychic world, like as in communicating with spirits. I don't know how to do this myself, so I brought in someone who does know how to do it. I bet you want to know what her name is.
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
Let's put it this way. If you've got a Jones for a psychic podcast, I've got just the show for you. The name of the show is Spiritual Philos-O-Chatter with the Joneses, and that stars Samantha and Danny Jones. Now, Danny unfortunately could not make it, but we have Samantha, and she is a psychic medium. And I had a really great talk with her about being a psychic. I tried getting someone else to be on the show, but unfortunately, they never got back to me, and I was really disappointed that I couldn't do a show about psychics because I really want to understand what goes on inside their brain. How does this process work? How are they able to communicate with spirits? And I gotta tell you, finding Samantha was such a stroke of luck. I was really glad that this other person canceled out because Samantha really provided a very real, honest presentation of the psychic world. And she's still learning as we speak, too. She said there's more knowledge to be obtained. So let's head on down to the conference room of the Sherpa Chalet and have a word with Samantha Jones. And as you know, today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. And you can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. And there's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. I don't think they have any audiobooks on how to navigate down to the conference room at the Sherpa Chalet, so you're just going to have to take my word for it, and we'll just go in this direction, and hopefully we won't get lost. Here's the conversation that I had with Samantha Jones. Hey there, all you rebels of the Sherpalution. You know, we hear about keeping up with the Joneses. We've got a different kind of Jones to keep up with. Her name is Samantha Jones, and she's the host of Spiritual Philos-O-Chatter with the Joneses, and she hosts it with her husband, Danny. Samantha is an animal communicator. She's a psychic medium and also a yogi. So welcome, Samantha Jones, to the
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm glad to have you here. Why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh gosh, you just covered so much about me. I don't even know where to begin. Well, let's see. What can I tell you? Like you said, I'm a psychic medium and animal communicator. I have been an animal communicator most of my life. I want to say my first vision was about 7 years old, but I actually didn't know that I was a psychic medium until a couple of years ago. It just kind of developed over the years. My mom had passed away in 2004. And after she passed, it was almost like I created this like instant connection to the other side. I just knew that she was able to send me signs and those kinds of things. And then, it just a couple of years ago, like I said, it hit all of a sudden. I met this other psychic lady, and long story short, she told me that I had these abilities, and I started building them, and here I am.
Wow.
It's been pretty amazing. Yeah.
You said that you had like a spiritual awakening. That's how you referred to it. Is that correct?
I did. Yes. I'm still going through that process. Are you familiar at all with what a spiritual awakening is?
That was going to be my next question.
Okay, cool. Cool. So let's see where to begin with this. So with a spiritual awakening, it's almost like it's a point in your life where you start taking a look at things that you never looked at before, the bigger picture of life, the meanings, all these things. Well, for me, it hit me because I started opening up these psychic gifts. I had no idea what a spiritual awakening was. I didn't even know there was such a thing. So once I started opening these gifts and I started seeing what the other side was showing me about how things really are and what life is really about, it started changing me and changing the way that I looked at things, as well as my husband. He's gone through this entire process with me. Even our daughter, my stepdaughter, she's kind of gone through some of it with us. It's like a whole change of your life. Everything changes, the way you look at things, everything. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing process. I didn't even know a couple of years ago that this was a possible way to live life, but I'm so much happier now that I've been through this.
Is it like a thought that comes in your head in this awakening?
Well, the awakening happened in different stages. And honestly, I don't think I'm done with it. I think that I'm still awakening to the things that, you kind of just wake up to, like, the meaning of life. So I don't want to say it's like seeing something or hearing something like as far as when I do readings, it's more like this knowing and this, like when I connect to the other side, okay, I can see kind of what it's like over there, and I can feel how they are and how peaceful they are, and how they want us to be peaceful and how they want us to love each other. And it just gives you this completely different perception.
And you said another psychic helped you realize that you had psychic abilities.
Yes.
So,
and this is a pretty interesting story, actually.
Okay.
Because it's the second time actually that it's happened to me that I've had a psychic come to me to bring a message to me from my mother. Because this was before, obviously, I could communicate with her myself. So she would send me signs like numbers and music and stuff like that. But I never really knew what those messages meant. And then I went out because I'm a pet sitter. That's my full-time job. And I was taking care of this lady's cat. I was helping with medication for it. And I went out to her home. And as I was leaving, she asked me if my mother had passed away. And I was like, oh boy, there's mom, because she had done this before, So I already knew. I'm like, okay, she's got a message for me. And then, like, this lady just told me everything about what I was worrying about in my life, and that my mom was like, everything's going to be okay. And, you're on the right path, and don't worry. And then, by the way, you can do this too. You can talk to the other side. You can talk to me. And it was, yeah. So that woman changed my life. The way that she was brought to me, it was like it was completely meant to be. And that's what they do. That's what the other side does for us.
Would you say it was like a collection of maybe different signs that came to you that were just kind of pointing you in a certain direction?
Oh, yes. Always. Still, even like with things that I deal with on an everyday basis, because just because I have these gifts, it doesn't mean that I know everything or that I know what's going to happen for me. I still have to figure out like what's going to happen for me and where I'm supposed to go. But these signs that you're talking about, they really do put these in front of us to show us that we're going the right way. And once I started going that way, the signs started happening even more. And it was like my mom was showing me, okay, good. We're moving in the right direction.
One thing that I've always been curious about mediums is the process by which you do your psychic reading. So Could you kind of walk us through it? So we kind of, I think maybe that's part of the problem. People don't understand everything that's going on in your head. So maybe,
no, I absolutely agree with you.
Describe it a little bit.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. I think that people don't understand how these gifts work. And I was actually one of them too, before I had them, because I always thought that psychics could read your mind. And I'll tell you, we don't read your mind. It doesn't work like that. So that's not like we hear all your thoughts and those kinds of things. The way that things come to me, if I'm doing a reading for somebody, most of my readings are done through text message. It helps me flow better. I can just let it go. I do phone readings or in person. But what happens is I connect to a higher source. Okay. So I feel like they really start talking through me. So when I'm typing, it's like I'm not even there. I'm just typing. And when I'm talking, when I'm giving these readings, it's like I don't even know where these things are coming from. They're just flowing through me. Okay. There are times where like I'll see things, and that's a very different way. I know people say, well, do you see something physically in front of you? And no, that's not it at all. It's, if you've heard of, you have a third eye, and it's like seeing with your third eye. It's like a dream. It's like a daydream, but it's so vivid that that it's being sent to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, actually, I was just going to ask you, like, how do you know, when the spirits appear? So it just hits you. It's out of the blue.
I'll tell you a story. As I was falling asleep the other night, I started hearing the name Tony. And I had a friend named Tony. I didn't know if that's who they were talking about, but I kept hearing this name, Tony. And then all of a sudden, I got this vision of my great uncle, and his name was Tony. And he started talking, and he was clear as day, but I hadn't heard that he had died. I thought he was still alive. And so then the next day I found his obituary on the internet and that he had died. And so sometimes things just come like that. And it was like so clear, but it's not like he's standing in my room. It's like he's in my head. You know what I mean? That makes sense.
Is it something that follows you around? Like if just say for argument's sake, you were to go to a supermarket and,
right,
you walk past a woman, would you all of a sudden just get a sense of somebody trying to reach her? Or is it something that you control in that?
It really depends, because I know this is probably going to sound weird and confusing, but honestly, my abilities are a little different every day. It depends on the kind of mood that I'm in and how connected I am to the other side. So I do have days where I will feel those things, that I will be that connected, that I can feel things from people, able to sense if there's something physically wrong with them. I am still learning a lot, because like I said, this medium side of it at least only started for me a couple of years ago. So I'm still learning a lot and still developing my abilities. So where mediums like Tyler Henry or the Long Island medium, who have been mediums their entire life, they may see things a lot more than I do. For me, I feel things, or, I might hear things, but it really is. It's different every day.
I don't know if you had brought this up in one of your episodes. They talk about auras around people. Yes. Could you kind of explain that a little bit?
Well, we all have like an energy field where everything is energy. So you can see, really, I think anybody can see an aura. I don't think you need special gifts for that. If you have, like you say, take your wife and put her up against a white wall. And if you focus beyond that white wall, you can kind of see the person's aura. It's their energy field. Okay. So, and then they say that we have different color auras. So for me, I don't see them as bright as maybe some other people do. I see like a very faint glowing color of what your color may be. And all the colors mean different things about where you may be in your life or your energy, those types of things. But it's pretty specific, all the different colors. Like I said, they mean different things, but I think that's definitely something anybody can do, is to see auras.
And that's something that you would only see on just a living person. If the person came to you, for example, for a reading, and would you sense another person's aura who actually wasn't physically there?
I don't. I'm not saying that other psychics don't, but I don't. I can feel energy from the spirits, but they don't normally appear like that, for me at least.
Now, you're also an animal communicator. Now, I know people get intuitions about their pets because they get very attached to them, but this is what you're doing. It's different than that. It goes a little bit further than that.
It does. This is my passion. I love animals, and I have been connected to them, like I said, my whole life. And the first time that this happened for me, that I communicated with an animal, it was a dog of mine, and I sent her a message in my mind, not knowing what I was doing. And she did exactly what I asked her to do. And I was like 7 years old, so I had no idea what was going on, but with the animals, they communicate differently than people do. Obviously, they can't talk. But if you've ever noticed that animals can talk amongst each other, they use telepathic communication. So that is what I'm using when I'm talking to an animal, is basically I'm speaking in my mind to that animal and sending pictures, and they're sending back to me.
And like, what are the types of things that animals communicate to you? Are they giving you a message, or is it you're sending something to them to kind of see if they're going to respond to you?
Well, it's both, actually. Because I get things all the time, like people have lost animals and I'll try and look for them, or like they have behavioral issues that they want to deal with. Or sometimes people just want to check in with their pet and see how they're doing. So like, let's let's say somebody just wants to know, hey, is there anything I should be doing for my dog or cat that I'm not already doing? And I'll ask that question to the pet. And they usually will show me if there is anything. And so then I can tell the owner, okay, well, I'm picking up something like maybe they don't like their food, or they would prefer more tuna, or you know what I mean? Just like little things. But then you have it the other way too, where, you know, it might be an animal trying to get a message out like I'm sick, or, you know, the person doesn't know what's going on and they want to find out how their animal's feeling. So there's really a million different things, a million different ways to talk to these animals, but they're all pretty open to it for the most part. They like it, I think.
And it's primarily like dogs and cats, or do you do horses and like, what about like smaller, like rodent types animals, like guinea pigs and stuff like that?
Yes, I have talked to them all. I talked to a lot of horses. I have a page on Facebook that's for free readings. And so people can go into this group and they can post for a free reading. And then I give them like a sample. So I answer one question for them. And I have a lot of horses. I love to talk to them. In my pet sitting, I don't get to pet sit horses. So this is kind of a fun way for me to interact with them. And then birds, I love birds. And I get a lot of those. And sometimes small animals. I did a bunny rabbit earlier today, occasionally. So yeah, everything. And I've talked to actually animals in the zoos before. So you can talk to any of them.
When we were talking earlier, you know, we both agree that, you know, there are going to be skeptics in this world. I mean, you obviously are well aware of that. You know, make no bones about that fact. How do you deal with that?
You know, when I first learned that I was a medium, I honestly didn't want anybody to know, because I thought people were going to be very mean about it. And honestly, people have been nice for the most part. Like my friends on Facebook or people that I meet, they're not cruel. Have I met skeptics? I have. But the thing is that when you have these abilities and you know how real they are, it doesn't matter anymore. Does it hurt your feelings a little bit? Yeah, maybe it stings for a second, but I know what I do and I'm comfortable with that. And so honestly, it doesn't really bother me anymore now that I'm like completely out about it.
Did you ever have a situation where you maybe had to disprove to somebody?
Sometimes we get people like in that reading group that'll be like, I'm a skeptic, change my mind. And there's nothing that makes a psychic want to run faster than somebody that's already got that kind of attitude, you know? Right. But I'll take the challenge. I have no problem with it. And usually they have nothing to say after I've read for them. They're just like, okay, you know, I don't know what happened there. If it's real, if, you know, everybody wants to find how it's not real. Like, what could she possibly be doing? Did she find me on the internet? No, it's real. It's 100% real.
Now, your husband, Danny, he was a little bit skeptical when he first met you?
Well, I actually didn't tell him until a few years into the relationship about my abilities with animals. I wasn't really using them at that time in my life because there are people, like you said, that are skeptics, and I just didn't want to deal with it. And so he saw, like, in me over those years, though, that there were things that I knew. There were things, and he would call me Dionne Warwick, because he'd be like, okay, psychic network, you know. So when it happened and the medium thing happened, he was like, okay, this makes sense. You know, it just finally kind of all clicked them. Okay, that's why she knew that. And that's why she knew this, you know. So he's not a skeptic anymore, though. That's for sure.
And now you said he's starting to learn about the things that you're learning about as well.
He is. Well, he's been with me on this journey every step of the way. And that's why we do the podcast together. I think we're better together. You know, we can play off of each other, and he has learned a lot, and he's kind of been on the same path that I'm on, learning all of these things. And he's actually knows things that I don't. Like, he'll read books or listen to books that I haven't listened to yet. And so he can teach me things too. So it's pretty cool. It's been really neat.
How did you first meet?
Well, that's a good story too. So let's see. That story goes back to 1994 when my ex-husband was working with him at Subway, the restaurant, the sandwich shop. And so I met Danny through my ex-husband. Danny was in a band, and my ex-husband also was a fan of the band. We were only dating at the time, but then we moved to Vegas, me and my ex-husband, and Danny was here with his soon-to-be wife. And so we had, you know, our marriages. And then around the same time, we both got divorced. And we hadn't talked in years. And then we actually found each other on a dating site and we reconnected and got married 5 years later.
And that's funny. And you actually did an episode about karma, didn't you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there you go, right?
It's a very strange way that things play out in your life. It is. Once you look back and you're like, whoa, I never imagined in a million years that when I met him, we'd be married. But I really believe that was the purpose. That was our path. That's what we were meant to do. Yeah.
Do you find that there are any specific elements of the spiritual world or the supernatural that fascinate you the most?
That's a great question. I still don't really understand why they communicate with us the way that they do, because for me, it's not like it's full sentences, when I'm talking to them. And so I am fascinated with how things actually work for them. How are they able to get things through to us? Especially when they do the things like the numbers and the songs, how does that work? And it's not something, they don't tell me these things. These are the types of things that we have to figure out for ourselves. And my husband and I have over the last couple of years, there's a lot of things that we have figured out, but this is one I haven't quite yet. And it mystifies me. I think it's a very cool concept.
When you hear these songs, are these popular songs, or are these maybe specific lyrics that might have a specific meaning? Or is it just a made up melody that's going to goes along with this person?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, actually. Like I said, after my mom passed, I was already seeing the signs immediately. And the ones that she used the most was music, because her and I both love music, and she started taking me to concerts at a very young age. And so, for example, one of the songs that was big on the radio when she passed was Hoobastank, The Reason. And that song very much fits my relationship with my mother. And so now, still today, 15 years later, we still use that song as a way of communication. But sometimes I'll also be if I'm having a bad day or something, and I'll get in the car and I'll turn my car on, and the first lyrics that I'll hear are something that matches exactly how I'm feeling, and almost like a calm down. It's okay. So they have different ways of doing it. It's all kind of trial and error and learning. And so it's lots of fun.
This has happened to me in the past, and I know this is going to sound like a silly question. Did you ever get a song stuck in your head, and then you get into your car, you start it up, you put on the radio, and a song that's stuck in your head is at that point on the radio? Mm-hmm. Is that some sort of psychic energy, or is that just dumb luck?
No, we all have this ability. It's just that most people don't believe in it enough to use it or to develop it. So when you have those kinds of things, like what you're talking about, or like when you think of somebody and then they text you or they call you or whatever, that is your psychic ability picking up on those things and letting you know that they're coming. I think why people get confused about how this works and maybe don't believe in it a lot is because they make it too complicated, and it's actually very simple. And one of the ways that we hear our own psychic abilities is as a statement or a question to ourselves. Have you ever been oh boy, did I lock the door? Well, that may be your intuition telling you that you didn't lock the door. It's things like that we don't understand as our intuition. We just believe that it's our thinking, and it really is more. So we can all do it. So what you're talking about is very much intuition.
When you wanted to learn more, were there certain books that you read? Were there maybe YouTube videos, or, how do you learn to develop your skills?
Well, the first thing that I did is I joined a few Facebook groups that are actually teaching groups. And in those groups, they will post things like people will hold an object in their hand, clasp it in their hand, and you're trying to figure out what's inside. Or, they'll put a card and you're supposed to guess what's underneath it, or whatever, all those types of things. And so I started in groups like that and doing readings for people, just trying to see what I could get. And I was accurate from the first reading that I did. So that's how I learned. I went in and just started practicing in these groups. But then since then, like I said, I'm still learning. And I'll tell you what is the biggest teacher is just time and experience. And you just over time start to understand what is your intuition and what isn't, or, all those things. But as far as then the spiritual awakening and the learning about things that, like you were talking about the karma, or all the subjects that we do on our podcast, the things we talk about, these are things that maybe we've also read in books or online, or things that Meditation is a great time. I'll do like meditations, and then the other side just feeds me things. So it's kind of a combination of a lot of different ways that you can learn.
Judging by what you know, but what things that you've discussed in our little conversation here, it's a question of really, you got to know your mind.
You do. Yeah. It's like, it's a muscle. Your brain is a muscle, just like anything else. And if you don't want to use it, then you're not going to have that kind of ability, not just like psychic ability, but learning. If you don't apply yourself and you don't want to work that muscle. But once you do, once you open that up and you start really working it, it can grow really fast. It's pretty amazing. I truly believe anybody can do it.
Has any like psychic ability ever been tested in like maybe the scientific community or maybe the psychological community?
It has, actually. There's a website. Can't remember what the website is, but there was a group that studied mediums. And they did like all different kinds of things with them, trying to figure out like brain waves and whatnot. But there was also an episode of Tyler Henry. He's the Hollywood medium, where he goes to like a brain institute, and Dr. Drew put this cap on his head and they measured his brain waves. And it actually showed that when he was doing the reading, it was like he was falling asleep. And then when he would come back up, it was like he was waking up. And that, to me, is exactly what it feels like, is like going to sleep, waking up, going to sleep, waking up. So they have tested it. They can prove that there is something different happening in our brains when we do these readings. And it has also been proven in these studies that mediums have different health issues. Like we have a lot of health issues that maybe normal people don't, because we take on a lot of energy that other people don't. It's really cool, the studies that they have done. So there's definitely, they need to do more. I would love to see more.
Yeah, that's definitely the type of science that I think a lot of people could,
right?
Could definitely like to learn about. People get hung up on, what's in outer space and black holes,
yes,
dark matter and everything like that. And here we are, there are spiritual elements that are right in front of your face without even, you don't have to think about it.
I think that if more people knew what was actually going on, they would live their lives much differently, because I don't think people do. I didn't think about this type of thing, and that there were spirits helping me and, our loved ones. That's what they do on the other side. They don't just sit on a cloud and float around and play a harp. They guide us. They help us. And if more people would open their eyes to that, I think that they could live happier lives. And because that's what they want for us, really. That's what our loved ones want, is for us to fulfill our dreams and have happy lives. And they're just trying to show us how to do that.
Do you like a lot of the responses that you get? Are they very specific to people, or
yes,
is it a lot of?
I get a lot of very specifics. That's really what people need, because if you don't come with the specifics, if you're just like, yeah, you're talking to their dad and you're like, yeah, your dad loves you, blah, blah, blah. No, you got to have the specifics. Dad loved to watch football, or he was a doctor, or sometimes it's really small things like nicknames, just things, whatever that spirit might think that their loved one will be like, okay, there is no way on earth that this woman could have known that. That's right. What they send me.
And I think that's probably what brings out the skeptics. If they're just giving the general responses, like you said, oh, your father loved you. Well, you probably spoke for like a large percentage of the population.
Exactly. And sometimes the messages can be confusing. They're not always straightforward. And so sometimes we do have to pick them apart a little bit. It's almost like a puzzle. So sometimes at first, maybe a detail or two won't make sense, but then we look into it and it starts to make sense and evolve into whatever message it is that's sending. And I think that's something else that makes people skeptical, is that they just expect that you don't have to do that it's just like, here it is in your brain right away. And that's not it. It's like, you have to put these puzzles together, and sometimes it's words and sometimes it's pictures, and sometimes the pictures don't make sense. And so, yeah. I get it. I understand the skeptic.
As we know, this is a podcast about podcasts.
Yes, it is.
Are there any special podcasts that you like to listen to?
There is one. Okay, so there is a famous hypnotherapist, and her name is Dolores Cannon, and she did past life regression. Her daughter has a podcast. Her name is Julia Cannon. I can't remember what the name of the podcast is, but she's wonderful. She does the same kinds of thing that her mom did. It's like the past life regression, and she's a medium. So they talk about a lot of the same things that we do. And there's several mediums. I like to listen to the other mediums podcasts. It helps me, like James Van Prague. He has his own as well. So those are probably my favorite ones.
This is a portion of the show where we have what's called shameless self-promotion.
Shameless self-promotion.
Yeah.
This is where you can let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you, or if there's anything else that you'd like to promote. The floor is all yours, my friend.
Well, great. Thank you so much. So if you'd like to reach me, I have a website. It is SamanthaJonesPsychicMedium.com. Or you can also find me on Facebook or Instagram, and that is Samantha Jones Psychic Medium. And let's see, then I have the podcast as well with my husband, like I was talking about, and that is called Spiritual Philos-O-Chatter with the Joneses. Now we know that that's a hard name to look up, so the best way to look it up is at Spiritual Joneses. I've kind of made it so that that comes up everywhere. So if you search at Spiritual Joneses on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all those places, you'll be able to find us just great.
Okay. All right, the dogs are barking, so I guess
I know. There they go. Right? At least they waited until the end. My babies. I have a Great Dane and a Black Lab, so it's not like I could go anywhere in the house where you wouldn't hear them bark if they barked. Yeah.
All right, they're probably hungry, so I will let you go, Samantha.
Wonderful.
Samantha Jones and Danny Jones.
Thank you.
Spiritual Philos-O-Chatter with the Joneses. That's the podcast. Make sure you guys check it out. And what days does it usually premiere?
Friday mornings, usually.
Friday morning. So get up bright and early and check it out. See what she's got to talk to you about. Samantha,
well, thank you so
very
much. Thank you. This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And now it's time for Sherpa Suggestions.
If you're a fan of Spiritual Philos-O-Chatter with the Joneses, here's a few other podcasts for you to check out. We have The Psychic Partners Show, Psychic Medium Kevin Jones, So You Think You're Intuitive podcast, and Psychic Insights for the Modern World, and finally, Life After Life podcast. All of these you can find in the spirituality section of the Library of Podcastia. So check them out. But please don't tell any of the spirits that I sent you, because I owe a few of them a little money. Thanks so much for coming down to the Sherpa Chalet and listening to Too Many Podcasts. And a special extra thanks to Samantha Jones. And thank you so much for helping me explain to the world, all of you out there in Podcastia, about the psychic world. And don't forget to check out Samantha's podcast with her husband, Spiritual Philos-O-Chatter with the Joneses. I know I've said it a couple of times, but next week is our season finale. And how are we going to end our season finale? We're going to be discussing true crime. And we will be talking with Corina and Dylan from Morning Cup of Murder. I think you'll really enjoy it. I had a lot of fun talking with them. They're really great people. I've been so lucky this whole season to be talking with great people. I know that I probably say that a lot, but it's the truth. Follow us on social media. You can check us out, on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And of course, for Twitter and Instagram, you would look for the number 2 and then Many Podcasts. And Facebook is just Too Many Podcasts with the word. You can also listen on my website, which is http://jimthepodcastsherpa.wixsite.com/website. Oh man, I gotta do something about that website name. I know. And if you have a TuneIn subscription, you can also listen on your Alexa speaker. You would just say, Alexa, play Too Many Podcasts on TuneIn, and you'll hear it. Boom! Your latest episode right there coming out of the speaker. How much easier can it get than that? You can also listen to me on all those big podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, and Podcoin. And there's a few other ones too. And of course, don't forget on Anchor FM, where you can leave me a voicemail message. And if I like it, we'll play it on a future show if you have a question or a comment or something like that. You can also leave me a nice review, please, on Apple Podcasts or on iHeartRadio also, or on Stitcher.com. I appreciate all of your feedback. If there's stuff about the show that you really don't like, then just send me an email. And my email is jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com. You know, maybe there's a suggestion that I'm overlooking or something. Maybe something that you're hearing. Maybe it's the sound. I know I'm working on it. I promise you I am working on it. Next week will be the season 1 finale with Corina and Dylan, where we discuss Morning Cup of Murder, their podcast, and we talk a lot about serial killers. Ooh, be careful. Don't worry, it's not too grisly, I promise, just like their podcast isn't that grisly. After that, we're going to have a little mini show, I guess. I don't know how long it's going to end up being. I have to still record it. And I will acknowledge actually all the guests that I've had this past season. And I really want to say a special thanks to all of them and, of course, all of the listeners and people who are supporting this podcast, because without you, then I'm basically just talking to myself, aren't I? Well, I'm kind of doing that now, but you know what I mean. Okay, I think that's all I have to say. Mr. Bruce, take us out of here, please. And viva la Sherpalution!
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yeah, I'll come back now, you hear?